My mother stood on my porch with a folder of legal papers and asked me to sign over half of my house. 9 years after she told me I was dead to her. 9 years after she watched me carry my own wedding dress to my car because nobody in my family would help me put it on. She didn't say sorry. She didn't even say hello first. She said, "We need to talk about your father's estate." Like nothing happened. Like she didn't erase me for almost a decade. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what she said next. My name is Renee. I'm 35 years old. I live in Sacramento, California, in a small blue house with a crooked mailbox that my husband Marcus has been promising to fix for 3 years. 9 years ago, I was 26, working the register at a CV's on Watt Avenue, making $13 an hour, and I fell in love with a man my family decided they couldn't accept. Marcus is black. My family is not. And when I told them I was marrying him, my mother looked at me like I'd told her I was marrying a stranger off the street. It didn't happen all at once. That's the thing nobody tells you about a family falling apart. It doesn't crack like glass. It erodes like a riverbank, one comment at a time, until one day you look up and the ground you used to stand on is gone. It started with little things. My mother stopped asking about Marcus by name. She'd say him or your friend, even after we'd been dating for over a year. My father went quiet whenever I brought it up, like silence was easier than honesty. Then it got louder. Thanksgiving, the year before the wedding, my uncle made a joke at the table, the kind of joke that's not really a joke, and everyone laughed except me. I looked at my mother, waiting for her to say something. She just passed the mashed potatoes. I went home that night and cried in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes before I had the strength to walk inside. I started working extra shifts at CV's just to avoid being home, where my mother would casually mention options I still had, like Marcus was a phase I could grow out of if I just gave it enough time. My paycheck was small, my patience was smaller. But I held on, because Marcus never once made me feel like I had to choose between him and feeling safe in my own skin. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was still coming. 3 weeks before the wedding, I sat my parents down at their kitchen table in Elk Grove and asked them, one more time, to come, to walk me down the aisle, to just be there. My mother folded her hands and said, "Renee, we raised you better than this." Better than what? Better than loving someone? Better than choosing happiness? My father didn't even look at me. He stared at the table like it owed him an explanation. I asked them directly, "Are you coming to my wedding or not?" My mother said, "If you marry him, don't expect us to be part of your life anymore. We won't come." And after that day, we're done. I waited for my father to disagree. He didn't say a single word. I drove home and sat in my car outside Marcus's apartment for an hour before I could even tell him what happened. When I finally did, he just held me and said, "I'm so sorry, Renee, but I'm not going anywhere." On my wedding day, I got dressed in a hotel room with my best friend Talia zipping up my gown because my mother wasn't there to do it. I carried my own bouquet to the car. Nobody from my family showed up. Not my parents, not my sister, not one aunt or uncle. Marcus's mother cried happy tears watching me walk down the aisle, the way my own mother should have. And in that moment, I realized something that broke me and rebuilt me at the same time. Family isn't always the people who share your blood. Sometimes it's the people who show up when the others don't. I didn't know it then, but that was the last time I'd hear my mother's voice for 9 years. The months after the wedding were the hardest of my life. Marcus and I were broke. Really broke. We were renting a 1-bedroom apartment in Rancho Cordova, splitting bills down to the dollar. I was still at CV's, working the closing shift most nights, coming home smelling like the pharmacy counter in exhaustion. We had no family to fall back on, no safety net. When our car broke down that winter, we didn't have anyone to call for a loan. We walked to work for 2 weeks straight, in the cold, because that's what we could afford. I remember standing in our kitchen one night, counting out change from a jar to see if we had enough for groceries, and just breaking down crying. Not because of the money, because of the silence. My phone never rang. My mother never called to ask if I was okay, if I was eating, if I was happy. It was like I had died, and the only person who noticed was me. I started feeling like I'd made the family I came from disappear. Like maybe I deserved this, the isolation, the loneliness, the years of birthdays and holidays with an empty chair where my parents should have been. Marcus never let me believe that for long. He'd remind me almost every week, "You didn't lose them, Renee. They left you. There's a difference." But some nights, even his words couldn't reach the part of me that still wanted my mother to call. I didn't know what was coming next. I had no idea that the silence would last almost a decade, or that it would eventually break for the ugliest reason imaginable. 2 years into our marriage, everything started to shift slowly, quietly, the way real change usually does. Marcus encouraged me to take night classes at American River College while still working my shifts. I studied pharmacy technician certification on my lunch breaks, scribbling notes between customers. It was exhausting. There were nights I wanted to quit. But every time I thought about giving up, I thought about my mother's voice telling me I'd ruined my life, and something in me refused to let her be right. I got my certification. Then I got hired as a licensed pharmacy tech at a clinic in Sacramento, doubling my old paycheck. A year later, I was offered a lead technician position, managing inventory and training new hires. Marcus, meanwhile, had been steadily building his own career as an VAC technician, eventually starting his own small business with 2 employees under him. We weren't rich, but for the first time, we were stable. We bought our little blue house in 2021. We had 2 kids, a boy and a girl, who filled the silence that used to live in our home. Everything changed after that. Not because anyone gave us a chance, because we built one ourselves. Which brings me back to that morning on my porch. My mother stood there in a blazer I didn't recognize, holding a manila folder, looking older than I remembered, but with the same sharp edge in her eyes. My father had passed away 8 months earlier. I found out through a cousin's Facebook post, 3 days after the funeral. Nobody called me. Nobody invited me. And now here she was, asking me to sign papers that would give her sole control over a piece of property my father apparently left jointly to both of us, something she clearly hadn't expected and desperately needed me to walk away from. Turns out my father had quietly changed his will 2 years before he died, splitting a rental property between me and my sister, evening out something he probably felt guilty about for years. My mother needed my signature to refinance it and pull equity out for debts she never mentioned to anyone until she needed something from the daughter she'd erased. I stood in my doorway, in the home I built without her, and I asked her one question. Did you come to apologize, or did you come because you need something? She didn't answer. She just held out the folder. That silence told me everything I needed to know. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I did something that scared her more than anger ever could I stayed calm. "I'll have my attorney review it," I said. Same as I would with anyone else asking me for something. Not Mum. Anyone else. Her face changed when she realized I wasn't the broken 26-year-old crying in her car anymore. I had a husband who never once made me feel small. I had 2 kids who would never know what it felt like to be unwanted by their grandmother. I had a career I built from a $13 an hour register job. I had a life of full, steady, hard-won life that didn't have a single hole in it shaped like her. I told her I'd think about the property, not because I owed her generosity, because I'd become someone who makes decisions from strength, not anger. She left without another word. I haven't decided yet what I'll do about that signature. But I know one thing for certain. Whatever I decide, it won't be out of fear of losing her again. I already survived that. There's nothing left for her to take from me. People think revenge means tearing someone down the way they tore you down. But the deepest revenge I ever got wasn't a slammed door or a cruel word on that porch. It was simply this: I built a life so full, so steady, so loved, that her absence stopped being a wound and became just a fact. 9 years of silence taught me that the people who walk away from you for loving the wrong person were never protecting family values. They were protecting their own comfort. If you're standing where I once stood, disowned, alone, terrified that loving the right person will cost you everyone else, I need you to hear this. You will survive the silence. You will build something they can't take credit for. And one day, they might come back, not because they missed you, but because they need something from the person you became without them. When that day comes, you get to decide what kind of person answers the door. I chose calm. I chose strength. I chose myself. And that, more than any apology she never gave me, was the only justice I needed.